I think if you look at that initial roster from the West Coast Hockey League, we're one of two teams standing, and really probably the only team that's been uninterrupted standing for 25 years.
The voice you just heard is Matthew Hayleigh of the Bakersfield Condors. For today's show, we're joined by three guests, all from the Bakersfield Condors organization. First, we have team president Matthew Hayleigh. Matt joined the organization in late 1997, way back when they were named the Bakersfield Fog and games were played in the convention center. He took over about a year later in 1998. That was the season leading up to the Bakersfield Condors' first season in the newly constructed Centennial Garden, now known as Mechanics Bank Arena. A couple years later, in 2001, he became president of the Bakersfield Condors organization, and in 2002, he became acting commissioner of the West Coast Hockey League, the WCHL. That was the league they were playing in at the time. He played a large role in the transition from the WCHL to the ECHL. That was the next rung up in minor league hockey leagues. In 2014, in January of 2014, the Bakersfield Condors were purchased by the NHL's Edmonton Oilers and became the Oilers affiliate AHL team, the American Hockey League. Matt has stayed on through the transition and continues to run the show for the Condors to this day. Next, we have the voice of the Condors, Ryan Holt, originally from Boston, Mass. Ryan came to Bakersfield in 2011 to work for the Condors. He handles all the marketing, digital media, public relations, and you probably know him best as the team's play-by-play broadcaster. And finally, if you're a Condors fan already, then you certainly know centerman Luke Esposito. Luke returns to the team this year for his fifth season as a Condor. He's an amazing player, team leader, solid producer for the team every year. In addition to that, he's been very involved with local youth hockey. He's been running clinics and skills sessions to help the next generation of Bakersfield's hockey stars. In today's program, we discuss the upcoming season, which is just a few weeks away. We also discuss hockey as a sports business and the impact that it has on our community and the benefits of having a high-level minor league professional team in our own backyard. We discuss the history of the organization, how it all came to be, and each of our guests gives some great insights that they've learned along the way. So stay tuned for a great discussion.
Welcome back to the Our 2 Cents podcast, the show where your local professionals sit down with an array of guests to hear their story and impart some wisdom for both business and life-improving skills. This is your place to hear business and community leaders discuss relevant topics that matter to you.
And welcome to the Our 2 Cents podcast. I am Scott Hansen, your host today. Before we get started, please take a minute to subscribe to the Our 2 Cents podcast on whatever podcast listening device you're using. That really helps the show, and we really appreciate it. Also, check us out on Instagram. And with that, Matt, Luke, Ryan, thank you very much for joining us today. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I've been real excited about having you guys on the show. This is a big year for the Condors. Maybe we can start there. Ryan is the voice of the Condors. Maybe you can tell me about how exciting this year is going to be, being the 25th anniversary season.
Yeah, it's really special, I think, from a local level and our team level, but also how fortunate we are to have had professional hockey here in Bakersfield with the Condors name for the last 25 years. It's not
really
something
special.
It's not something that happens in minor league hockey often. There's only so many teams that get to 25, let alone other milestones as well too.
Man, minor league in any sports, right? That is a real challenge. That's a real success story, and it says a lot about our local fan base. There definitely is a sports fan base here. Matt, who knew that it was a hockey fan base after all?
Yeah, we've been blessed with a great fan base, a great arena. Just really everything. Yeah, you're right. I mean, if you look back, this is our third different league in 25 years. We're in the West Coast Hockey League, the ECHL, and now, of course, the AHL for about 7 years or so. And I think if you look at that initial roster from the West Coast Hockey League, we're one of two teams standing, and really probably the only team that's been uninterrupted standing for 25 years. So, I mean, a lot of factors obviously go into that. We talked about the fan base. We talked about the arena, the community involvement. Coming here from 25 years ago, which when I came here, I was in minor league baseball. So we kind of took some things that you need to be promotional oriented and you need to be involved in the community. And whether it's baseball or hockey or basketball or football or whatever it is, those are kind of our mantras in running the business operations and the business side of it. And it's worked well. And obviously hockey is a tremendous sport. There were people here in Bakersfield that were hockey fans, and there are more now, obviously. But, there's hockey towns in Detroit, and we kind of call Bakersfield Condors Town.
So you're here with one of your longest running fans. I've been going to the game since the Bakersfield Fog and have never missed a season. In fact, the Bakersfield Fog is what hooked my wife and I to buy tickets for the first season. That was 98, 99, I believe. The Centennial Garden, the jewel of the Golden Empire, as it used to be called, Mechanics Bank Arena now. But yeah, back in the red seats where you sat out in the convention crowd.
In the theater.
It was something else. Who thought that could even be done? That was kind of amazing. And then from that to a whole new arena, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean, if you go over to the convention center and we can kind of paint the picture a little
bit.
I do. And because you were there. But yeah, there were school events. There's, bands play at the convention center. There's choirs, the symphony, whatever, plays that happen out there on the stage. So basically you were playing hockey on a stage. And on the stage was one goal and the goalie. And we had clear dasher boards, I mean, the dasher boards with advertising signs, that's one of our biggest revenue sources. But we didn't have dashers because you had to have the clear the clear glass because, in the orchestra pit and so forth, a lot of those seats were actually below the level that if you had the dasher boards you could have seen. So you were looking at the goalie's rear end.
You're sitting out in the crowd looking down the hockey rink from the vantage of one of the goaltender ends, and none of the seats were very close. There was that small line of bleachers right next to it that maybe there was 4 or 5 rows or something.
Yeah, I think there was probably about 500 seats on each side that were elevated.
Yeah.
And that was dangerous because those seats were like above the glass.
It was wild. It was great.
There was a lot of back and forth between the players on the ice and the fans in the stands and our public address announcer. And then when the guys would leave the ice, they had to walk across the stage. So they'd come out to get to the locker room at the intermission. So every intermission, they'd walk. I remember Chad Wagner from San Diego. He got in a fight with the fans at one of the intermissions. The guy threw a chair at him walking across the stage.
Luke would have been good back in those days.
Oh, he would have been great.
Luke would have been perfect for those days.
Me? It reminds me, in my memory, it reminds me of things like you saw on the movie Slapshot. I mean, it was just wild like that, where there just was no barrier between the fans and the players, and everybody was in the same game together. It was crazy.
The roof was so low, so the puck had hit the ceiling all the time.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember Derek Velker up there calling the games in the catbird nest, and you had to walk up a ladder to get to where you called the games. The ice usually melted in one end of the ice because the chiller wasn't very good. But anyway, we made it through it, and here we are today.
Wow, how far we have come. So taking the team over to the new arena was a big deal. Also, having it become part of the WCHL at the time was a pretty big deal because I don't think it formally was. And that was kind of what started the road to moving up the ladder of minor league hockey as leagues go, right?
Yeah, we played for the Taylor Cup in those days. And, we had it was kind of on the backside of folks' hockey career, if you will. We had Dan Curry and some guys that had played in the NHL and were still kind of kicking around, maybe in their late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, maybe even past then in some instances. So things have changed a lot from that standpoint too, because you had these talented guys that had been in the NHL, and then you still had some young guys that were trying to get to where they could get to, and then it slowly has kind of changed over time, where we went to the ECHL, kind of that AA of hockey, and certainly there are guys making the National Hockey League from the ECHL, but not as many as today. When really now you look at our roster, half our team has played in the NHL, and the other half have a pretty good chance of playing in the NHL at some point. So it's pretty cool.
That's pretty great. Now, you'll go to games and watch guys on the rosters, and 1 minute they're in your own backyard here in Bakersfield. Next thing you know, you turn on the TV and they've been called up and they're playing in the playoffs, right? We saw that just this year.
It's cool from, our perspective. It's cool from a fan perspective. It's cool from teammates' perspective. It's especially, I think, last year, and maybe Luke can even touch on it too, seeing some of the guys go up and be part of the Oilers playoff run and realize that they were part of us a week prior.
Those are pretty cool. Your own line mates, Luke, right?
It's a really underrated league. I mean, I know growing up I was one of the biggest hockey fans among any of the guys I played youth level hockey with. I watched every night the NHL, and I grew up in Connecticut, and we had the Bridgeport Sound Tigers less than an hour from my house, and that was something that I just never went and saw. And now playing in the league, I think it's really underrated among fans outside of AHL cities of how good the hockey is, what a great development opportunity is for so many players, and like you guys touched on, how much crossover there is between the NHL and our league. So whether it's watching my own teammates, my own line mates go up within a season and back down and back up, or go up and never come back down, or if it's I look at all the guys we played against and, these kids that have been sent down to start their careers in San Diego or, Henderson or all these great teams we played. And now you look and they're, NHL prospects becoming superstars, at least moving that direction. So it's really cool to say, I played with that guy, or I played against that guy. And obviously that's the goal for all of us, is to get to that level as well. But like you said, there's a ton of crossover. So it's, something that I'm proud to be a part of and, chasing the dream just like everybody else.
Yeah, and so the Oilers ended up becoming the owner of the Condors in,
2014-15.
Yep. So we're going on 7 years now.
Right in there. Yeah.
That was a huge transaction, too. Who was more happy about that, Matt, you or Fleissig?
Well, yeah, we'd been owned by, you mentioned the name Jonathan Fleissig, a one-man band, if you will, is from an ownership standpoint.
Yeah.
Now, he had some minor investors, but he was a commodities trader out of New York, and really this was just one of his forays into professional sports. He had owned a couple baseball teams, a couple hockey teams, was involved with the ownership of the Las Vegas Wranglers, somewhat after, obviously, the Condors were established. But those were fun times for sure. There's certainly pluses and minuses with being involved with a big corporation versus kind of being your own act. So when we were wooed by the Oilers, and then eventually worked out that we were sold to the Oilers, I mean, just the Oilers, right? The Edmonton Oilers.
Right.
I mean, super exciting because, a team that I watched, growing up with Gretzky, and that's when they were winning all the cups when I was a kid. And so super excited. And then, guys like Kevin Lowe coming down here and really having a say and really talking about what a great organization we were. And they bought us because of proximity out west and being involved with, the Kings AHL team and the Ducks AHL team, but because of our fan support and because of our community commitment and because of what we had established. And as you know, Edmonton and Bakersfield have more in common than besides just the Oilers and the Condors. I mean, they really have a lot of things in common with the oil, with the agriculture. I mean, they're very similar communities, just one's in the United States and, usually over 100 degrees, and one's in Canada and usually under 0 degrees. But other than that, there's a lot in common.
It's true. There's a lot of Canadians who are relocated here for either permanently or temporarily with oil companies and various businesses, and I think they find it pleasantly surprising when they show up and there's an AHL hockey team in their town where they're coming to. And hockey in general. Luke, maybe you can talk a little bit, too, about just the local hockey scene, even outside of, and the work you're doing on that, even outside of the Oilers and Condors organization.
Yeah, going into my fifth season here now.
Yeah, I think you're at least 5.
Yeah.
You might be 6. Is it?
Oh, fifth.
Yeah, I should know this. I should know this.
Yeah. Ryan,
it all blends together.
What's the stats, Ryan, on Luke here?
I'm in the off season.
But now, having spent a number of years here and spent some summer time here, a lot of us rent houses, so I've continued to rent the same house, and so I've spent a lot of my summer months here. And over the last couple of years, I've kind of gotten involved with the Junior Condor program over at our. It's a public rink, but it's where we practice when there's concerts or venues at our rink. Anyways, I've gotten really involved there and found that there's actually a great program here, which, I don't know, I guess being from the East Coast where hockey is very dense and moving out to California, you don't really expect that. And finding some of these kids that are so honestly just in love with the game. I mean, they're young. They may have started late, but the city and the program does a great job giving these kids tons of access to ice. And whether it's going out there doing a lesson or just going out there and enjoying some stick time, horsing around with their friends, just being on their skates, there's a lot of kids that are really enjoying it. And, I wouldn't be surprised to see more and more kids follow in the footsteps of, I look at like a teammate of mine, Braden Watts, who's from here, grew up here. And, as you get older, everybody looks to, the bigger leagues, whether that's college or major junior. So obviously you do end up at some point having to move away from home. But I think now with the program they have built here, kids are going to be afforded the chance to stay here longer and longer and develop on the ice. And they're playing better competition. The teams are getting better. The teams are getting deeper just within each age group. So it's really fun to get out there and see a lot of the kids throughout the week. And then, when the season starts, they get to come see the games and see them in the crowd and waving. And so, that's one thing about the American League versus the NHL. Sometimes I find there's a little more connection between the players and the fans. The buildings are a little smaller. Sometimes the crowds are a little smaller. And so you get kind of pick guys out and, they're down on the glass in warm-ups. And I find sometimes there's some real connection between the players. And now being in the same city for 5 years, I definitely feel that here.
I can speak to that. I had two young boys here come up in the program, Junior Condors. Used to be called the Dragons, now Junior Condors. And so we've been in that program for 18 years. My oldest boy, Austin Hansen, played with Braden Watts. They're the same birth year, and they played for years together. But it all started in the concourse at Condor games. It all started at intermission. We're sit down and watch the game, and then at intermission, we're up there for 20 minutes, and they're skating around, in their shoes on the slippery floor, passing pucks to each other, and that's where it all started. Still have my youngest boy still plays in midgets. I can speak from experience where they love it when you guys come out. It's been such a blessing to have you guys locally to be able to come out, spend a little time on the ice with them. They just love it. And then we've been so fortunate to have a lot of alumni, Condor roster alumni, stick around in town, raise families here, and then become huge part of our coaching staff there. That's really been a huge part of making that program successful.
And that's rare too. I don't think people realize how fortunate to have professional hockey players, or at least alums, basically at all levels throughout the Junior Condors program, throughout all of our minor hockey program here in Bakersfield. The rink is run by two former Condors. So these are professional athletes that have stayed here in town, worked locally. I mean, Luke knows this growing up, but usually like your dad or your uncle or your cousin is like the bench coach for your
coach.
Yeah, for your Pee Wee team. Yeah. It's not a professional hockey player.
That was me. When they were young. That was me. I was the dad coach. But then they turn about 10 or 12 or something, and you're like, okay, I can't help you out anymore.
I mean, between Mike Hofstrand, Andrew Iannero, Glenn Mears, Jamie Cook, Kevin Barrett. I mean, Paul Wilt and Scott Hay running the rink. It really is fortunate to have professional hockey players running basically every level of the program.
Yeah, and I can speak there too. I mean, Landon played from 4 to 14 before he just focused on baseball. He never had a coach that was not an ex-professional hockey player, ever. Yeah. That's amazing.
It's pretty amazing.
You'd think he would have been better.
Right here in Bakersfield, California, that is pretty amazing. That says a lot about the ripple effects, or the second kind of level of benefits that this community's had by having the Condors present here. So let's talk a little bit about maybe just the business of the Condors, and maybe how it applies to a lot of other local businesses. A lot of businesses here advertise with you guys, buy season tickets, things like that. How much of that kind of sponsorship level is a part of the Condors as a business?
It's really important. We wouldn't have been here, a couple years, much less 25 years, without the support of the community. And, certainly a lot of individuals buy tickets and have season tickets, but really, the support of businesses is what you need for that long-term success and staying power. And really, businesses of all size too, whether it's, quote unquote mom and pops or, some of the largest corporations in town, because there's so many ways to be involved, from just an employee satisfaction. A lot of companies use it as safety programs and use their tickets, entertaining clients, just the annual, gathering of, hey, let's go out and have some fun with the staff. Well, let's go to a Condors game. I mean, so many people do that. So that entertainment aspect, and that's what we are. We're fun and entertainment. So a lot of companies obviously are looking for that in their downtime, and a way to schmooze clients, if you will. And then there's just the straight the sponsorship or the advertising, where folks are putting their logo on a dasher board, or they're, Ryan's doing some things with them on social media or in his broadcast, or, over the PA, and we're somewhat infamous or famous for some of our promotions, and most of those have company, tie-ins, and we really believe that we're a big benefit for businesses here in Kern County for just the straight economic impact that we have, which is, millions and millions of dollars a year, but also to the individual businesses themselves. And we think sports marketing provides a good ROI for a business.
So if you mentioned Infamous, if any of our listeners haven't gone online and checked out the YouTube video of the time you guys brought in the actual Condor, that's worth a watch. That was classic. Yeah. I was there that night, and it was pretty entertaining in person. I think the YouTube video does it good justice, though, but it was pretty funny. That was pretty wild.
My phone didn't stop ringing for about 2 weeks with USA Today, and media was a little different back then. Social media was just starting to take off. Yeah. So I remember it took us a little bit to upload to YouTube. Now it takes us 5 seconds, but it was the news cycle was a little longer than it is nowadays.
That was big news, right?
Yeah, it was big news. It was on ESPN just about 2 weeks straight.
Luke is the hockey player in the room. Maybe you can give a little insight as how it is coming up as a hockey player, and maybe a little advice for local kids who go to games and want to get more involved in hockey. You have juniors experience, Harvard, right? 4 years at Harvard, and NCAA Division I, right, at Harvard, and then here now at the AHL level. Maybe you can give a little advice as what's like coming up, and maybe what kids could look forward to if they get involved in hockey.
Yeah, well, just for those that aren't as familiar with it, hockey's similar to a lot of sports up until about high school, and then it kind of has evolved into this mess, kind of organized mess of a couple different options. But most kids play up until high school just in their local youth leagues, and same as any other sport, you can join a travel team. It could be AAA, AA, whatever level you're at the time. And then high school, you start being afforded some options with whether you're going to play for your local high school. In some areas of the country, Minnesota, the Northeast, the schools themselves are very competitive leagues. And then in some other parts of the country, the high school teams won't have a competitive league. And so kids will continue in that same organization that they have played their whole lives in, or go to a different one and continue to travel around. And then after high school is when the real decisions are made. In Canada, it's a lot different. A lot of the kids tend to join what's considered major junior hockey, which ends at about 20 years old. So you're from 16 to 20 years old, you can play in the league across Canada. There's 3 leagues, and then you have the chance there to turn pro. But like I said, it ends when you're 20. There's a couple over age, so 21. And then you have to be ready to turn pro, and a lot of times guys wind up in the East Coast League or the American League, and then the top players are able to go straight to the NHL. And then other than that, there's the other option is to keep your amateur status and go play. It's also called juniors, but you don't lose your NCAA eligibility. And there's leagues all across the U.S. and Canada. And then a lot of what I ended up doing, I did all 4 years of high school, and I went out to British Columbia and played a year of junior hockey there, kept my NCAA eligibility, and those leagues offer incredible recruiting opportunities for players. A lot of kids will already have a commitment while they go out there, and some won't. I went out uncommitted, and by Christmas, I went from hardly having an offer from a school to having kind of my choice of where around the country I wanted to wind up. And I was able to, I was afforded the opportunity to play at Harvard for 4 years there. It was an amazing 4 years. I think a lot of people will look at that and think, you go there for the academics, and which obviously is the case, but they really have built an amazing program now of giving guys a chance to get their degree, do 4 years, and also train and prepare to become a professional hockey player. And you look at I just saw something on social media this past year, just NHL players, and there must have been, in the last 10 years, there must be 17 guys right now in the NHL just from last season that have graduated over the last 10 years. And that's not including there's got to be another 10 of us playing in the American League and East Coast League. So it was an amazing place. I learned a ton, both in the classroom and outside of it. You just meet some amazing people there. And, I wouldn't change it for anything. I got everything I could have asked for there. And then...
You know what? You're touching on something that it took me a long time to figure out. As a guy from California who never played, and then my kids want to play, and now I'm trying to figure out the track for them. Yeah. I'm going, okay, major juniors, but you said juniors, but juniors isn't major juniors, and one's... Right. Right. Keeps you eligible. It took a long time for me to start to understand, okay, there are these different levels. Some is considered pro, or you lose your amateur status.
Right.
And then it also was really odd to me to hear or understand that really the college route was not the traditional route. It was very much major juniors. That was your goal. And then that's how you got picked up, right, for an NHL team or any kind of professional team, right? And then there's been the shift, like you're talking about, where there's been the tilt more towards let's figure out an education route, even if it is in one of the lower level juniors teams, organizations or leagues. It seems like they're starting to give college money now, or college, tuition that you can roll forward into an education. That's a real change, I think, that's gone on, right?
Yeah, like I said, it certainly is a bit of a mess. And like you said, the terminology is difficult too with juniors and major juniors, but like you said, I think the percentages have shifted over the last certainly the last 10 to 15 years. I don't know them exactly, but if you look at the NHL 20 years ago, the percentage of players coming out of major junior, obviously you're going to have your Europeans coming straight from, they have some great leagues over there developmentally. But if you look at the NHL now, the amount of players that are coming out of college has certainly increased over the recent past. And, I don't tend to go one way or the other just because I think every kid has their own path, and I think for a lot of kids, major junior is the right path. I look at myself, if I had gone and played major junior, which again loses your amateur status and therefore you can't play in the NCAA, I probably wouldn't still be playing hockey. I wouldn't have been physically mature enough, or just mature enough in general, to become a professional at 20, 21 years old. I needed those extra 4 years of college till I was 23, 24 before I turned pro. And if it wasn't for that, I still had to spend time in the East Coast League my first year pro. So I can only imagine if I had to turn pro 3-4 years earlier, I don't think my career would have gone the way it has.
I think that's true for a lot of players, right? Ryan, I know you follow all these guys on the roster and the roster league-wide. What do you see, as a trend? And a specific question is, can a young hockey player growing up in California, do they need to leave California these days with the way California hockey is growing? Or can they get pretty far without ever needing to go very far?
The answer is no. You can stay in California and play in Southern California and a lot of those leagues right now. And what we're seeing, the Robertson brothers, guys from California that have grown up in California and maybe have left at 18, 19 for a year or two, but are quickly in the NHL or quickly in the American Hockey League, basically through, a lot of the Southern California and Northern California programs. And now you're seeing it even stretch into, like Luke mentioned in Bakersfield. And I think the good thing about hockey, and Luke touched on it, was it's different than other sports in the sense of baseball at 18, you have to make a decision. Is it pro? Is it college? There's no holding of rights. There's no, I can, let this go for a couple of years and see what happens. You have to make a decision. Hockey's a little different in the sense of you can go to college a little later. You can stay, eligible with your draft rights. You can stay eligible with your team rights. So we have players that are signed by the Oilers or drafted by the Oilers, and their rights are held while they're playing in college. So you don't have to turn pro. You don't have to make that decision. So as Luke said, I think it benefits a lot of guys who are able to come out at 23, 24, and now you're ready to roll. And you're still, maybe up against a 20-year-old, and one's physically more mature and one's mentally more mature. And that's where the playing field kind of levels off, and you're able to, form a league and form a team that way.
It is a growing sport, like by leaps and bounds. It seems like it's just expanding everywhere.
California, Southern, the southwest portion of the U.S.
Yeah.
Dallas has a great program there. There were a ton of westward expansion. There were a ton of teams in Texas, minor pro teams, and the Central Hockey League. Those teams had a foothold in communities.
Yeah.
Florida's starting to come. One of our top defenseman a couple of years ago was from Florida, and born and bred, lived in Florida his whole life.
Yeah, I think it's just people getting over the terminology, the rules of the game, and going to a couple games. Because I know when we invite people to the games, they're pretty well hooked on game one or game two. They want to come back and they want to do more. They may have never known about the sport, but it has that impact on you. And, that's how we became fans originally. So here we are coming up pretty close to the preseason, and our first game, I believe October. Correct me if I'm wrong. 15th.
Give us an extra day. We need it.
All right, you need the extra day. Give us some, insider news on what do we have to look forward to, who's on the roster, what do we have coming up that might be interesting to our fans this close to the start of the season?
25th, I'll start, and then you guys, I'm sure we'll be able to pitch in too. 25th anniversary, so we're doing a special commemorative program. I think we're going to do a poster collage, kind of give away to the season ticket holders and the fans, and a lot of, just turn back the clock, if you will, and we just, rolled out our preseason warm-up jersey, pregame warm-up jersey, which is kind of a take on things we've done in the past. So just looking back and trying to celebrate the history, and certainly long-term fans like yourself appreciate that, and then letting new fans know, hey, this is what's, gone on in the past, and it's something that should be celebrated.
Yeah, and I think, to Matt's point, the new fans, and I'll even just speak to the arena and the new kind of, places we have in the arena to be able to entertain clients or to be able to have fun. And Matt mentioned kind of the younger fan, right? I mean, we have new bar areas and, our ice level lounge downstairs right on the glass, and you only need a game ticket to get into, or the new bar on the concourse, which was basically put in during COVID. So like we all came back to the arena and we're like, wow, that's really cool. And then finally people were able to enjoy it. But yeah, so there's a lot of cool stuff in the arena, and, our new video board in the last 4 or 5 years continues to get enhancements. So the game experience itself has really taken off, I think, over the last, really since the American Hockey League. The play on the ice, the play off the ice as well, too. So really cool stuff. We're looking forward to it. And Luke's going to be a big part of our team this year, and looking forward to another great one.
Looking forward to that. Luke, what are you looking forward to the most?
Yeah, I was going to say, from the players' perspective, I think the best thing we can do for the fans is win. I look at the most fun seasons we've had here, and in those seasons there's a lot of winning, and the fan numbers increase as we win. I look at the year we won 17 straight. Mm-hmm. I mean, the crowds just
they get behind you.
And it was incredible. Like, the momentum gained, and we almost felt an increased pressure, but also that energy from the crowd. We wanted to win, not just for ourselves, but for the crowd, who had continued. It was like a snowball. It just got bigger and bigger, and, that was incredible. And then making the playoffs is always huge. So that's something from our point. We want to win just to be successful for our own, our own brand, but for the fans as well. I think that gives them the best experience for sure.
Talk to me a little bit about team building and the chemistry on the team here leading up into the season. I mean, we didn't just have players called up. We had our head coach called up, right? I mean, that doesn't happen every day.
No.
How often does that happen? I mean, even that is a bit of a feather in our cap to say that that's where his roots are from, is here in Bakersfield. How's the next roster forming up as far as team chemistry and the team building?
Well, our head coach was our assistant coach to start last year, and then became our interim head coach when Coach Woodcroft was called up. So we do have some experience with him. I'm really looking forward to him being back behind the bench this year. Hired some new staff to go along with him and help him. And then, in the American League, there's always a certain amount of turnover. I think a little more so than most NHL rosters. But it is nice to see coming into this season, we do have a lot of our veterans coming back, our leadership core, and some young guys as well that are looking to improve and, push their career further and make that jump to the NHL. So I think we have a good mix of some new blood coming in, whether that's the staff or the players. And then also, it always helps to have guys that have been there the year before that are familiar. When the season starts and everybody comes in the locker room for the first time, it's nice to know a couple guys. And then it seems the hockey world's small. Everybody seems to know everybody at some point or another. You played against them, with them. So even these new guys that have come in will likely know one or two players, and that helps integrate guys a lot. So we're looking forward to, taking that new energy and, forging forward again this year.
Yeah, as a fan, we're looking forward to it too. This is going to be a great year. Sounds like a lot of fun. Guys, before we wrap up, we always like to end with a few rapid-fire questions. You guys mind if we rapid-fire you a little bit?
On the hot seat?
Ryan, let's start with you. Since you're the voice of the Condors, and people probably feel like they know you anyway, right, because they hear you all the time calling the game play-by-play. Why don't you tell us something that people don't know something about you, something they don't know about you?
That's a good one, because I'm actually pretty introverted. Telling Matt this the other day.
Wait, the radio guy?
Believe it or not,
right.
Like if I had my choice, I would enjoy just being on my couch kind of by myself with a sports game on. I'm not a go out and party type of guy, so definitely more introverted than extroverted, even though the position that I have is pretty extroverted. But yeah, I think my junior French teacher told me that I'd be good in drama, and I thought I'm never going to act or drama, but here I am, and it's just life's biggest drama. You don't realize it.
I love it. Luke, who's been your biggest mentor?
an interesting one for me because I have hockey in my blood. My mom's side of the family, her dad and her brothers all played professional hockey growing up, so I think it could easily be one of them. But I think just looking at my life and the way things have gone, I'd have to say my dad's my biggest mentor. Just like genuinely the kindest soul. I mean, he never has I can't even imagine him having a bad thought towards anybody. And his work ethic has just been incredible. You know, he was a Division I soccer player himself, so obviously he had that athletic drive in him. But whether it's, doing something around the house, cooking dinner, doing something for my siblings and I, there were 4 of us growing up, all close in age, so, and all with our own hockey aspirations, and my sister took up dance as well, so there was always somewhere, somebody had to be somewhere. And he was just incredible growing up, and just really showed us what we wanted to be growing up and what a man should be like.
Yeah, I like that.
He's also the most engaged fan of the broadcast as well too.
Is that right?
Yes.
You get a lot of call-ins? Or
yeah, no, he is. I can always count on a good text. Hey, that was a nice win. Good call last night.
Nice. That's good feedback. Oh,
yeah.
Ryan, as far as your role at the Condors, being the voice and PR kind of piece of it, what is maybe a common myth about your job?
that it's all fun and games. I mean, we do work,
Yeah.
I think that would be that we don't work during the off season too. I think, people sometimes have an impression that, okay, we start in October, finish April, May, and that's that. And, we have a lot of really hardworking people in the Condors front office, minor league sports in general. But, I can speak to, our group in Bakersfield, and a lot of us have been there for a long time. We have some new blood as well, too, over the last couple of years that have really brought some fresh ideas. But yeah, we work, 365. We enjoy it. But I think that's the best part is you get to enjoy the people you work with, and that makes coming to work, quote unquote, more fun, because we're not really working. We're enjoying what we're doing. And at the end of the day, you look up at the clock and it's, midnight or 1 o'clock, and we just had a big win with 7,000 people. And that's the rewarding part of the whole gig, because you were there for 15 hours that day, and, you didn't see much of daylight during that time, but you got to enjoy it. So, yeah,
I like that. Matt, I got one for you.
All right.
How'd you get such an amazing, beautiful woman to marry you and stay married to you all these years?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Wait, everybody's shaking their heads like they're all wondering this right now.
And she makes great cookies too.
So. Got to give you a hard time.
And I don't have any money.
I love Terry.
It wasn't because of the money.
And he works 20 hours a day.
What's the secret, man? Somehow you figured it out.
No, Terry's great. And I came to Bakersfield 25 years ago and thought I'd be here 3 weeks to help the Fog get ready for their last opening day as we moved in the arena, and one thing led to another. And obviously met Terry, who's from here, and the rest is history.
I love her. She's such a wonderful person.
Thank you.
Just trying to figure out what she's doing with you sometimes.
I could say the same about Brandy.
I know you could. I knew that was coming. All right, let's see. Maybe we'll end with kind of a hockey question. Maybe we'll go round table on this one. So if you had to put these in order, or maybe you can just tell me what you think is most important. Ryan, how about start with you? When you're out there watching, you're watching the game, you're watching players come through the organization, what's the most important hockey quality? I'm going to narrow it down for you. Maybe you have another one. I don't know. Hands, lungs, grit, vision, or flow? Flow and hair.
That's a good one. Since it's Bakersfield, I'll say grit. I think the best players that have come through here, and the best players that I've seen, the best players that have gone on and maybe had, lengthy NHL careers, they all had that kind of, mental toughness, and that's grit and determination. And I think it speaks volumes to the city itself, and also the team itself. I look at guys that have come through here that have been successful and been fan favorites, like Luke, like Brad Malone, like Josh Curry, Eric Bergdorfer, Ian Arrow. Go all the way back, Paul Rosebush and Venedin. They all had that certain, quality of grit and determination that made them successful.
Matt, what do you think? All these young hockey players, it's all about the hands, right? Or right? As long as they can snipe and sully, then they're good. So hands, lungs, grit, vision, or flow.
Well, I can't disagree with anything Ryan just said. Ditto across the board, and on the ice, off the ice, getting after it, and Guys like that Ryan mentioned, Luke sitting right here, and Bugsy, not only do they give it, they're all, on the ice, but also off the ice, giving back to the community and doing the right thing.
Luke, since you're a little light in the flow department, I'm going to say that one's off the list, buddy. Hands, lungs, grit, vision. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to say grit. I think even if you have the hands and the vision, even the best players, it's hard for them in this game. So without the grit, you're not going to get very far. You're not going to have the career that I think you dream of. But I guess lungs, and I'll go along with legs. I think the best players are the best skaters. That's what I tell all the younger guys that I work with on the ice. And if you're going to focus on one thing, focus on your skating. You can always learn the other things, but if you're a young guy and trying to improve, and I'm not even that young anymore, but I'm still trying to improve my skating every summer is the number one thing I work on. So lungs and legs, we'll go with legs.
What do you recommend on the skating? Because I think everybody wants to get out to stick time and shoot the puck, right, as they're growing up. I mean, that's what's most fun, or playing a pickup game or something. But is that really where they need to be? Is it just time on the ice, or is it actual technical?
Yeah, it's both. Time on the ice, definitely great. Like I said, there's a lot of opportunity here for those kids just to be on their skates, which is a huge thing in itself. But there is a lot of technique, and I look over at the rink now, and there's a lot of options. Like we said, there's a lot of professional players here who are on the ice with the kids, teaching them. And then also there's the figure skating. I know Ryan's wife was a figure skater, and there's a number of them there. And it's not just for figure skating. I'm working with the figure skating woman now. I've worked with them in the past. There's so much that you can learn from their side of it and put into our game. So skating's the number one thing for sure. So and then the last thing is cross training. I think kids love hockey, and it's great, and you want to keep that love though. And if you're on the ice every single day from the time you're 7 to the time you're 12, I mean, by the time you're 12 and have to start actually training, a lot of these kids are burnt out. So play another sport, get away from the rink. I would say in the summer here, but here, the summer is when you actually want to.
Yeah, you want to go in 40-degree weather,
which is great. As long as you're enjoying it. But I played soccer growing up because of my dad all the way through high school. Played baseball, lacrosse, and I think seeing these kids, you develop coordination and athleticism, and that goes a long way as well. So, and then when you get back on the ice, you have muscles that you didn't know you had before, and that goes a long way. So.
Yeah, all of a sudden you're faster. Right. Not sure exactly why, but
it paid off. You're happy to be back on the ice, which is huge as well.
That's great advice, Luke. Ryan, why don't you let us know, as we wrap up, what are all the ways people can get in touch with the Condors? Everything from buying tickets, checking out the schedule, knowing what's coming up, seeing the roster.
Yeah, our website's condorstown.com. We've got a Condors mobile app, which has all the latest news, notes, highlights, videos, all the cool stuff that we're doing. And then, lately, I shouldn't say lately, it's, last 6-7 years, social media is a great way to get involved and stay engaged with us, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all at Condors, and pretty expansive social media.
Yeah, you guys do a great job.
We do a lot of stuff, so it's nice to be able to connect with fans that way, and to realize that we're kind of the front door of the organization, social media wise, and everyone's back in the office, ready to take your calls, and we're ready for a big 25th year.
Yeah, you guys do a great job on that. If you go to enough games, you eventually end up on some of that social media. I know the whole family at one point or another has been on some kind of post or something you guys have done, just being in the stands or coming in the doors or doing something with you guys. So
it's on the back of your ticket. It'll say, we can use you for all marketing materials.
I like that. Yeah. Matt made sure that was in the fine print. Yep. I know. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Appreciate it, Scott.
The show has been brought to you by the Law Office of Kyle Jones, Troy Burton with the Lynn Company, CPA John Duffield, Scott Hansen Real Estate Lender, broker and investor, Dave Plivlich, President and CEO of the Marcom Group and MarcomBranding.com, and Amanda DiGiacomo, President of Atlas Financial Solutions. You've been listening to the Our 2 Cents podcast. Check out the show notes for links and more information about the show. Also visit our website at our2centspodcast.com or catch us on Instagram at Our 2 Cents Podcasts. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and share with others.